Saturday, it's August 5th. It's noon Eastern time. I am Bob Harris. This is the Football Diehards YouTube channel. It's time for our weekly Ask Me Anything session, or if you ask me us, you will. Got to turn me off. I got extra sounds going in the back. Appreciate you joining us here every Saturday at this time. Also on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. for our On the Hot Seat live streams. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Do all those things. And then like us. Or don't like us. I'm going to dislike us just so everyone feels free. I mean, you know, we're open to that kind of thing. I have a great guest. You can't dislike her. Awesome to have her on. Kelly Singh, you know, from Trophy Smack, Women Fantasy Football, Club Fantasy, the Sick podcast with Kelly Singh, the sickest Arizona Cardinals podcast, I am told. Kelly, how are you today? Thanks for joining me.
I am so good. Excuse me. Waking up, got a little froggy voice. So happy to be here. Thank you.
I hit you up early out there in the Western Pacific time zone, so I appreciate you getting up and taking care of business. We're going to keep you here about a half hour. If you have questions out there, you know the drill. Go ahead and put them in the chat. Any other nonsense or similar likewise things, we'll be happy to cover them there. Hello, Andrea. Hello, Troy. Hello, Brian. Thanks for coming. Appreciate everyone showing up, the usual crowd. Kelly, there's some things going on. Let's start figuring some things out. Alvin Kamara, we have some certainty. How are you feeling? Is this like kind of match up with your expectations? Or are you feeling like maybe the shares you have are more of a bargain than they should have been? How are you feeling about it right now?
I'm a little bit torn. I feel like that fight was quite violent from what we've seen on video. And when we have players being suspended for 6+ games for gambling on a internet website on unaffiliated NFL games, and then we have a representative of the NFL being obnoxiously violent and only being suspended 3 games, it feels dirty, I think is the best way to put it. But it's great for fantasy if we want to spin it that way, I suppose. Missing only 3 games, people who have Kamara shares are going to be really happy. I personally was expecting a much harsher penalty and haven't picked up that many shares of Alvin Kamara this season.
I feel like I'm in that camp. I have way more Kendre Miller, thinking that it might be a more extended version. He had a meeting with Goodell. Sounds like there was, he was fairly contrite, and at least owned up to it, unlike, I don't know, Deshaun Watson or others, who have not wanted to address the issue. So power to him for that. But I do feel like people are, who have been drafting him are going to make out a little bit here. And he's going to he'd already moved back up into the running back 2 discussion. I think he'll lock in there. There's some other uncertainties going on. Josh Jacobs, I've talked to a couple beat writers who cover the team. I talked to our friend Marcus Mosher. I talked to Hondo Carter from SI just the other day. Everyone who covers that team feels like the Josh Jacobs story is a non-story, that he'll show up week 1. If it's like a week before the end of camp, or the week before the first game, and everything will be just fine. Maybe he'll slightly start is like the downside. Then Mike Florio throws it out today that it's possible they rescind the tag and he ends up a damn Kansas City Chief. Jonathan Taylor also has the uncertainty going on right now. What is your approach to players like that or situations like that? Do you feel like there's enough value to steer clear, or are you looking to cash in on that value?
I feel like they are still going to land and be playing healthily somewhere. I mean, you have J.K. Dobbins almost in a very similar situation, not that he's leaving the Ravens, but sitting out, as we're told. And I feel like it's a solidarity move, perhaps, among running backs, and just saying, we know things aren't necessarily going to change, but we want to voice our unhappiness about the current state of things. So I give them props for at least making an effort of sharing how they feel and using whatever little power that they do have. I don't see them not playing. I don't see Jonathan Taylor not getting picked up, leading the NFL running backs. So Yeah, I'm going ahead and I'm drafting. I'm drafting away, knowing that they are going to play. The one I've been super concerned about is Ezekiel Elliott, and I think in his case, he's got age at the ripe old age of 28. That's probably the one free agency scare that I'm having this season.
Yeah, the one that is interests me, I see Ezekiel Elliott going ahead of him. I see Leonard Fournette going ahead of him, and it's Kareem Hunt because I think it's just so quiet. And I suspect it's quiet because people know there's an outcome coming, right? Or at least Kamara or at least Hunt does. And so I'm expecting him to land somewhere that totally destroys somebody's value. But also, I'm grabbing some shares really late. But I'm with you on Elliott. I think he and Fournette seem like similar players that kind of fit a similar mold, and they might be vying for a similar number of seats. Troy Olsen, so much Kendre Miller, he says, me too. Sadly, Alex Harbert. This is interesting. Have a great show today. I'm on my way to a winery, so I won't be here for long, but thanks as always. What the hell? Kelly Singh has the same story going on.
We have a date.
Mr. Scampers, good morning to both of us. He says, good to see you, Scampers. Thanks for coming. So when you hear those situations, like I'm seeing Jonathan Taylor going well into the, tail end of the second round. All of a sudden, I got Josh Jacobs in an FFPC draft at 310. Are you looking to cash in on those values? Is that your approach, or are there enough pieces in that general range that you think I can just swerve around that?
I feel like it is a good time to cash in. And some of the drafts I've been in, people are not shy about picking up their running backs. I think we've seen a trend in the last 2, maybe 3 years, for sure the last 2 seasons prior, where we were doing a lot of wide receiver, a lot of tight end, and, what is that? Contradictory to the classic running back. But I'm seeing it make a comeback this season. And I don't know if it's all the hype and the discussion around running backs and the talent that they do bring to the team. There's no doubt running backs are talented. And I feel like media might play a role in the popularity of the running back. And it's making a comeback in the draft. So do I see it as value? Potentially, but they are being snatched up, at least in some of the drafts I've been in this last couple of weeks, especially.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen these movies before, fantasy managers in general, speaking, not just me. And hello, Charles. Hello, Andrea. We're going to talk a little bit about JT right now. And hi, Dave. Thanks for coming. Kelly says hi, too. So I think, we've kind of like realized, or I think running backs, or maybe the world has realized since Le'Veon Bell, being the one who, like we used to always be able to say, oh, that'll never happen. And then Le'Veon Bell said, oh, yes, it will. And then, but I think he proved the point why it will never happen, right? I mean, you don't get that money back that you sit out. So whether it's Jacobs and Taylor, so Jonathan Taylor sitting out, I think is like the least likely outcome. He doesn't have a lot of options. The injury could be an issue, but I just feel like that's like I think as we look at all these things, Kelly, this is like a gambling proposition. You're looking at the range of possible outcomes and probabilities. I think all those things kind of point to these guys eventually playing, but maybe you get a slow start. If you're worried about a slow start, are there some backs you're interested in? I think of Rashad Penny as one I like. I think Jamal Williams suddenly becomes, more clearly one of those guys. But are there backs you're drafting later who you think might have a good early run?
Always. People are always on the fence about Antonio Gibson. And then look at the Seahawks. There's plenty of talent still on the Seahawks. Saying that from Arizona, please don't get mad at me, Arizona fans, but there's plenty of talent to be had there on the Seahawks. We've got Kenneth Walker III happening there. And then look at how much effort has been put into Jacksonville. I think we're going to see a lot out of Etienne this season. So there are still plenty of names out there. While I mentioned Antonio Gibson, while the Commanders may not be a great team as a whole, look at how the Eagles at one point were not a great team as a whole, and you were still getting plenty of fantasy value. So I feel the same a little bit about the Commanders this season. There are talented pieces that make great fantasy players. Same with the Cardinals, talented pieces that make great fantasy players.
Some question, and I totally agree with that, by the way. Antonio Gibson, I'm starting to grab some shares. And I want to share this. Hub Arkish from Pro Football Weekly was on Talking Bears last night. I had started grabbing some Khalil Herbert shares, feeling like I had way too much Deontay Foreman from early drafts. Hub, who is no hot take guy, I mean, this is a solid old pro. He used this word, Foreman is clearly the starter. Herbert is second. It's because Herbert isn't great at receiving, not great at pass protection. He's great at running the ball, but he said Foreman is clearly locked in, and also had Chris McPherson on from Eagles.com, PhiladelphiaEagles.com, and he's really keen, like every beat writer we've talked to, on Rashad Penny, but he thinks DeAndre Swift gets a bigger role as a receiver because he's a better receiver. Kelly, I reminded him, Miles Sanders got 50 passes as a rookie because he chopped liver there. So what is your approach with DeAndre Swift in drafts? Or do you find yourself getting many shares, or are you waiting a little later to get Penny?
If he lands to me in a position where I've gotten who I've wanted to get, he's not my top pick. I do love DeAndre Swift almost just from a nostalgia standpoint for me. It's a nice, comfortable, relatable, fun name that brings back great memories. I don't necessarily believe that it's going to be the hottest name on my roster, bringing me in the most points. So not grabbing him super early.
Right. I feel the same. And, Boston Scott's still there. There are 2 games against the Giants, so he's going to show up at some point as well. So we got that to deal with. A couple questions here from the chat I wanted to get to. TT Warrior wants to know if Calvin Ridley is being drafted too early, considering he hasn't played, plus they have a lot of weapons for the ball to go around. All fair points. Early reports from camp have been super positive, that he looks every bit like the guy we last saw tearing up the field, racking up 90 catches, 1,300 yards. Kelly, when are you drafting him? When are you comfortable drafting?
I was not comfortable drafting prior to camp, I'll tell you that. And I know a lot of us draft in some very early tournaments. And I was staying far, far away from that for the very reasons that you spoke of. And now that we're able to see him on the field, see that he has not lost his athleticism, it appears that he was very serious about staying in the game. So I think it's a great opportunity to start picking up Calvin Ridley. Or I don't think it could be too early as far as when it's time to go and pick that player for your roster, pick up Calvin Ridley.
Right. I've been, so I'm all in on Jahmyr Gibbs. And so I've been very angry the last couple of weeks when I've waited and felt like I should take him here. But no, it's not quite, the ADP says I can wait a little longer. You're in a room with, read your rooms and know who you're drafting with. And probably if you're drafting with me, draft Jahmyr Gibbs way early. And I think many people know they're drafting with me because I talk about it every damn chance I get. So, that is part of it, right? And I'm with you on Ridley. I think he's going in a nice spot. Melissa Harris, hello. Wendy Early, hello to you. Gemmo, thanks for coming. Have you done any drafts where you waited till the end? Boofy wants to know, drafted, 3 or 4 of Tannehill, Mayfield, Sam Howell, Colt McCoy, dipping in. And we're going to talk about the Cardinals here in a minute, but are you doing any late quarterback drafting? It feels like that's gone the way of the dodo a little bit.
Yeah, it obviously depending on if you're in a super flex league or not. I'm seeing quarterbacks go very late in a single quarterback league. So I feel like that part is okay, unless you get on one of those runs where somebody will pick up their Jackson, their Hurts, and their Mahomes all in a row, then that somehow starts the train rolling always. But if you're in a single quarterback league, I'm still seeing them going late. I am happy to pick up in a super flex league a Kirk Cousins later. And to your point, maybe even a Tannehill later, but Sam Howell, I did pick up later now that you mentioned that, and I'm a little nervous. But
I have to. Thanks, Ron Rivera. In case you missed it, Ron Rivera this week comes out and says, don't sleep on Jacoby Brissett. Everything points to Sam Howell starting, and Terry McLaurin talking about the connection he's grown with him after having a series of quarterbacks. Everything pointing in the right direction. We like that running ability. We saw that one game sample last year. We're all like, Sam Howell's my guy really late. And then all of a sudden, Ron Rivera comes in and just smashes it. Don't panic, people. He's probably saying just coachy things, but it's a concern. We're talking to Kelly Singh here. If you don't follow her on Twitter, I'm going to be very upset. But at Kelly in Phoenix, if you don't, you find her at Trophy Smack, Women of Fantasy Football, Club Fantasy, and on the Sick Podcast with Kelly Singh, where she talks Cardinals football. It's the sickest Arizona Cardinals podcast, I'm told. I have it on good authority. Sources tell me. My sources being my ears. It is totally the sickest. Let's say, look at the Cardinals. There's a running back there. And, Steve, I see your question. I'll get to it here in a minute. James Conner. If I go to my best ball 10s drafts where I've drafted mostly earlier, I'm more into underdog now. I'm almost embarrassed to say it. I'm like about 40% ownership of James Conner. Just seems like the price is right. And the recent addition, this week, Marlon Mack, does not make me feel like he's going to lose any turns as long as he's on the field. Well, how do you feel about James Conner?
I like James Conner. James Conner, do you want me to just rattle off away? James Conner being that he's, as you mentioned, pretty much the lone talent there in the running back room. The addition of Marlon Mack, I think, helps to strengthen that role a little bit, helps to create some additional targets for defense to have to look out for. But James Conner is going to own those targets from, I think, any standpoint. We also want to talk about wide receiver. We talk about fantasy. Marquise Brown, he's going to get the lion's share of the targets, I believe, still this season. Although there have been glimmers of Greg Dortch. He's great. He's fantastic. He's a jack of all trades for sure. But people, it's training camp, and he's going to play the same role he played last season. He's going to fit in, he's going to do his job, and he's going to come out again. Whereas Marquise Brown's going to sit on the field the entire game.
Right. And so Marquise Brown is an interesting play. I'm sure you're hearing the same thing. We're all hearing the same thing about Kyler Murray. He'd love to be ready week one. Seems very unlikely to be ready week one also. So we've got that we're working with. Same with Zach Ertz. I mean, maybe he has a better chance, but I don't know that he has the chance. Talking to some of the people who cover the team daily, Johnny Venerable seems to be, buying into some of the belief that Kyler Murray is the quarterback of the future, all that. Okay, they just paid him. I'll believe that as well. But I don't expect him to open the season. So if I'm looking at a player like Marquise Brown, I keep telling myself this year, one of the lessons from last season is don't avoid wide receivers with what I perceive to be less than ideal quarterback situations. Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin, many of them have told me that they can still excel, even with a less than ideal quarterback situation. So I see guys like Marquise Brown, I think going in the same range. Marquise Brown, Mike Evans, and Michael Pittman right now. How do you feel about that range of receivers that are obviously devalued because we fear the quarterbacks?
Exactly. And I think that's one of the silliest reasons to avoid these players, because they still, this team with a terrible quarterback still has to take the field and still has to play a game and still has to throw the ball. That has nothing to do with how well the O-line is going to protect. That has nothing to do with how well your wide receiver is going to run that route for that terrible quarterback to make that pass. So I think you need to really think about the talent of your receiver more than the talent of your quarterback, because like I said, they still have to go out there and perform. Whether they win the game or not, that's neither here nor there. It's whether or not your receiver is getting those targets.
Gemma wants to know, is Clayton Toon have a shot at being the starting quarterback in Arizona? The hype has already started rolling. Bob McManaman, I want to say, at the Arizona Republic got the ball rolling a couple months ago and kind of threw that possibility out there. I think, it feels like teams are maybe looking for the next Brock Purdy, right? And so I think that's why you get that Clayton Toon buzz. But to me, it seems like McCoy is pretty much locked in, barring unforeseen. Where are you at on that?
I'm not so sure, Bob. I'm not so sure. Colt McCoy has not looked fantastic. There was a terrible clip rolling yesterday. And again, it's training camp. But him throwing it square in the back of somebody. When I was at training camp over the last week, he was not looking good either. There were plenty of incomplete passes just going straight into the ground. But I'll tell you who I did not see that from. I did not see that from Clayton Toon. The last episode of the Sick podcast with Kelly Singh did a side-by-side comparison of Blau, McCoy, and Clayton Toon. And I'll tell you that Clayton Toon really seems to be hungry, which of course he's going to be as the young buck, but he also looked good. And the only time I saw a spark from McCoy was a drill they were running side by side, both looking to make a cross pass. And that's pretty much the time when I saw McCoy be like, oh my gosh, I'm stepping it up right now.
Okay, step it up, Colt. Okay, so like it's not like I'm sitting here investing heavily in Colt McCoy. I just took him as a fourth quarterback in a super deep league. So I mean, not like I'm heavily invested. Kyler Murray, where are you at on Murray in general? I mean, he seems like a bit of a polarizing figure. They just paid him a ton of money. At the same time, they paid him a ton of money. They told him to act like an adult. It just seems kind of contradictory, some conflicting feelings about him, even within the building and certainly outside the building. And I'm not saying the Cardinals are fixing the tank, but Caleb Williams awaits, and the Cardinals have a history of not like sticking with their first round quarterbacks.
I feel like we all came to the realization that it has been 5 years and we haven't seen any sort of amazing production from Kyler Murray. So it's hard to be in love with your quarterback when there hasn't been any real movement. And when you think about how long it's been, at first you're like, oh no, he's young. He just got here. No, he has not just got here. Actually, it's been quite a while. And that's where it becomes interesting with the Clayton Toon pick, actually. And the buzz around the circles here in sports media locally is there are some who really believe that Clayton Toon was actually best in class, which I find interesting because there was no media coverage at all on Clayton Toon. He was not Anthony Richardson. He was not CJ Stroud. But when you see him play, he is good. And so it makes me wonder if this is the move and that we are setting up Kyler to be traded away and we're moving forward.
Interesting. My knowledge of Clayton Toon is that he comes from the place where I live now, Carrollton, Texas, just outside of Dallas. So good on him if he gets it done. So how much? Let me just ask this: you've been watching this team closely. How much of the issues were Kyler Murray, and how much were Cliff Kingsbury? I've contended that like Cliff Kingsbury, for being supposedly a super innovative offensive mind, had one of the most predictable, boring offenses in the NFL. He didn't move guys around. He didn't change receivers' positions. Everyone lined up in the same damn spot. Do you think that's possibly been something that's holding back? I know they were designed to go together, but maybe that wasn't the right combination.
I don't know that it's the actual coaching and the plays that held Kyler Murray back. I think that Cliff Kingsbury held back Rondale Moore, held back Marquise Brown, especially held back Hopkins even. Hopkins and Marquise Brown running the exact same routes for 2+ years does not make any sense at all. So I don't know that it affected Kyler Murray as much, but I will say, in the way I think it affected him was the company culture, the culture of the Cardinals, the culture of this laid back Playboy Scottsdale lifestyle. And then it came back to bite him because you can't be the quarterback and live a lifestyle of Cliff Kingsbury, but that's the lifestyle that Cliff Kingsbury brought to the team.
Right. And on top of that, the view of players of management obviously was not good. They ranked down at the bottom, and the team, the players' feelings about the facilities, the ownership, etc. So it'll be interesting. Hoping Jonathan Gannon can turn things around. We've only got a few more minutes with Kelly Singh here, so I want to get to some of the questions because people want to hear your answers, Kelly. Steve Linder wants to know, 12-team PPR keeper league. He can keep 2 of these, and here are the rounds they cost. Breece Hall in the 4th, Kenneth Walker in the 10th, Ramondre Stevenson in the 7th, and Travis Etienne in the 17th. This one seems easy. Well, at least the tail end of it, right?
I would definitely see. I got thrown off by the Breece Hall at the front end, but I did like the Kenneth Walker there in the middle.
I did too.
And then at the Etienne at the very end, I love that as well. So that's kind of where I'm at, even though I know everybody's ears perk up when they hear Breece Hall.
Right. It's just that fourth round cost, comparatively speaking, with Walker in the 10th. I mean, Stevenson in the 7th is a little rich for me here with those other two as well. I like all four of these backs. And I mean, there's something to be said for Breece Hall. There'll be less to be said for Breece Hall if Dalvin Cook ends up there. But that's a shorter term situation over the time. But assuming it's a keeper league and it's a 1 year, year to year situation, definitely Etienne. I do have some concerns about Tank Bigsby. I don't want to overplay them, but definitely, a lot of buzz in Jacksonville. My co-host on Sirius, Mike Dempsey, has seen it with his own eyes. Mike DeRocco, visiting the Football Diehards radio program, told us he expects this to be, entire series of Tanks Bigsby, not maybe necessarily 3, but 1, 2, maybe 3 a series a game. We saw it a little earlier last year with Jonathan Taylor or James Robinson. I'm sorry. And so I suppose that's possible, but Etienne in 17th is like impossible to pass up. That one there. And Walker, for me, we've got the injury situation with Walker right now, nursing the groin. I'm not concerned about it. I want to hear if you have concerns with Zach Charbonnet back on the practice field. I've talked about it here. My feeling is the Seahawks approach has been the guy who's there stays the guy until he can't be the guy.
Yeah.
You feel differently about that?
No, I think that they've proven that time and time again. I think that's not to say that Charbonnet is not going to play this year. I think he's definitely going to get plenty of targets. But I think next year is the year of Zach Charbonnet because we want to see another season of Kenneth Walker III, as you said, until he can't anymore. And last year he did great. The year prior he did great. So I don't think we'll see any change in that lineup.
Ooh, Mr. Scamper's throwing in the chat. Eno Benjamin has a torn Achilles. Just now seeing this. I hadn't seen that yet. Thank you, Scampers. Breaking news. Our top news cat out there doing the fine work. So Eno Benjamin in New Orleans now. So probably will not be needed as much. Apparently, with the news at the top of this program, that just double checking this, that we have Alvin Kamara back after 3 games. So Benjamin, just. Look, not a super fantasy prospect either way, but they seem to have troubles in Arizona. And I don't know if you heard anything. I heard maybe that there was he feels like he's a lot better than perhaps his playing time suggests. And that was maybe a problem there and in subsequent stops.
Yeah, it was for sure. I actually think he got the short end of the stick in Arizona. I don't feel like that was a very fair situation at all because the times that Eno Benjamin did get to play, I felt like he performed. And for him to not continue to get playing time and then find out, you're pretty much just our sometimes guy, it doesn't feel good to a player, and I don't blame him for being upset about it, and I don't blame him for wanting to leave. I think it was a raw deal.
Yeah, it's definitely was a deal, and I'm going to take your word for it. I think players go from college where they were the best. They go from high school where they were the 1%. No one's close to them. They go to college where it's a narrow field. Then they go to the pros where everyone is within 1% of everyone in terms of talent.
True.
And it changes the mindset there a little bit for them. It might be hard to come to grips with. So I'll get you one more before I get you out of here. And we thank you so much for coming. Appreciate your opinions and inputs here. And just if you're drafting in the first round, right? Give me your top 4 or 5 guys. I keep feeling like there's maybe 6 guys that I'm willing to draft at 1 overall, try to spread my picks around with that 1 overall after Jonathan Taylor last year. So give me your top 3, 4 guys in the order you like them.
Oh, I always love Justin Jefferson. I'm still carrying over that wide receiver love from seasons past. Things are falling off my walls right now.
As long as they don't fall on you, Kelly.
Justin Jefferson. It is no secret that I love playing tight ends. I would choose Kelsey first. And then I'm always good with a Mark Andrews. Definitely. And I don't know. Obviously, if you can grab McCaffrey off the bat, that would be great. You're going to have to be sitting pretty. But those, I think, are my favorite 4. McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson, Kelsey, Andrews. You wanted those in order?
I feel like that's fine. I mean, I think, at that point you draft the one you get, the one you're presented with. If you don't have the first
I
pick
love
overall.
some Amon-Ra St. Brown. Again, I think any time you can land a roster with some Detroit Lions and get them stacked with a Jared Goff, you're going to be in a really good situation. And I've got plenty of that going on as well.
It's not hard to find people who think Amon-Ra St. Brown has top 5, ability and maybe in a position to do it with Jameson Williams out. All right, I want to get you out of here in a timely manner today. Thanks so much for coming in. Everyone follow Kelly, on Twitter or whatever they call it today, X, Y, Z. At Kelly in Phoenix, go to at Trophy Smack, at Women of _FF, at Club Fantasy FFL, find her all there, and at Sick Pod Kelly for the sickest Arizona Cardinals podcast known to man. Kelly, have a fantastic day. Thanks so much for coming on. I look forward to seeing you Expo next week with many of the people in the chat.
Yes, Bob, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much to all of my friends out there. If I could take one more minute to just give my heartfelt thanks for all of their support while I have been undergoing treatment for breast cancer this year. It has been a wild ride. I have one last surgery left at the end of August, and I'll tell you, it has been emotionally taxing, but had it not been for this community and their love and their support, I don't know that I would have been in such a positive place that I am today. So thank you so much to everybody for their love and support this year.
Yeah, you've earned that love and support by you're just a great part of the community. And by the way, if you're at the Expo, the Women of Fantasy Football, one of the more popular panels next year goes to the big room this year. So be sure to check that out. I hope to see you all there, Kelly, and definitely we'll see you there. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye. I gotta go. All right, Kelly Singh, everybody. Follow her on Twitter at Kelly in Phoenix. And I'll get to some more questions. By the way, sneaky flex that was, right? Scampers, look at her go. Holding up the stronger than cancer belt that she is. Congratulations to her on forging on through all this. And it is a great community. We all know that. So I'll get to some more questions here, and I'll hit on some other items as we go through the rest of the show here. Appreciate Kelly coming on. Glad to have her for as long as we can have her. And Mr. Scampers, even more consolidated New Orleans backfield. I feel like toward Achilles. Who else does that leave now? I got to look at the depth chart. I mean, look, we're only interested in the top 3, and actually it's the top 2 now, basically. We'll see what Kendre Miller can do there. They had one other body there. Who was it? It was Ellis Merriweather. No wonder I couldn't remember. All right. So there you have it. Alvin Kamara. By the way, on Alvin Kamara. So I had already moved him up in my rankings, up inside 30. I felt like in the immediate news of after the news came out yesterday, I felt like I ran to my ranker. I said, I'm moving him up. I'm moving him up even more. And then I started looking at who I was moving him up for. I said, no, I'm not moving him up. I've already baked it into the cake that he's going to have some missed time. So I'm going to keep him around 25. I think that's a fair assessment. If you want to jump up a little bit, I don't think there's anything the matter with that. I want to talk again about ADP. I've been learning some harsh lessons. Hard, brutal lessons about ADP, right? ADP, again, I keep stressing it. It's when players are being drafted. It's not when you have to draft them. You have to draft players you want a little ahead of ADP. Sometimes a lot ahead of ADP, and you might get ridiculed and people might scoff at you, but it's sometimes the only way you get players. An example, I was doing an FFPC with our friend Stacy Perez and Stephanie Miller the other night, a big tournament on the FFPC, and it's a tight end premium. So I was picking 10th. I wanted Mark Andrews. I thought, I'll get him in the second round. Well, I looked at the range, and I was going to go tight end wide receiver. So I look at the range of wide receivers there. I would have been happy with any of like 5 wide receivers. I was only going to be happy with 1 tight end there. So I reached a little bit. I feel like I changed the dynamic of the draft, by the way. I feel like tight ends started going way earlier, and everyone was not very happy about that. Too bad. I wanted Mark Andrews. And so I reached a little bit. It's okay, people. Even in the highest end of rooms, you could have these, you could have situations where there's a player you really want. But part of that was knowing I'd come back around. I ended up getting Devontae Adams. And I was doing a build. And I wanted to talk about this a little bit, too, on Underdog. These big tournaments, right? We're playing, if you're in that FFPC, huge tournament, if you're in the Best Ball Mania tournament, differentiating is a big deal. And so I was talking to Curtis Patrick from RotoViz a couple weeks ago on the Football Diehards radio program. You can listen to that, people. It's on today, 5 p.m. Eastern time on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Also on Monday, Thursday, Friday at 10 p.m. Today, Bob Lung will be my guest, or one of my guests. Along with myself and Mike Dempsey, we'll be covering the Titans and who else? And the Packers. So check that out. But, I think that Curtis was bringing up a bill, the need to differentiate from the field, just like in a daily, daily tournaments, right? You want to differentiate a little bit from the field. You got to be different. He had a unique build, so I was trying to experiment with that build. And what Curtis is doing on some of the Best Ball Manias is he wants to have his quarterback 1 before round 6. He wants to have 3 running backs before round 8. He wants to have a wide receiver in round 1 and his tight end before round 5. So basically a hero wide receiver build. He said like only 36% of the rosters, have similar builds to that. So it does differentiate you like that. And I think the running back dead zone kind of works in our favor there. So it was an interesting build. I tried it in this FFPC draft and I felt like it went pretty well. So I may be trying it a little more in some of the Best Ball Mania, leagues I start drafting here. Give me your thoughts on that, how you feel, what kind of builds you're using, if there's anything you're doing that's unique or different to try and stand out from the crowd in these. It's obviously fantastic. Get back to some questions here. Steve Linder, another league, is a point per pass league, a league which 3 quarterbacks should I look at drafting? Obviously looking for teams where quarterbacks projecting to have a bunch of passing volume. Well, the obvious, Kansas City. The top 3 are, I'm fine with any of those. By the way, a lot of talk about Jalen Hurts improving. There we go. So Nick Sirianni said he thinks that Jalen Hurts can get better, right? And you're thinking, well, how's he going to get better? Is he going to continue running in those short balls? And he probably will. So talking to Chris McPherson from PhiladelphiaEagles.com last night, his take was that Jalen Hurts is more accurate. Looks like he's pinpoint accurate in workouts. So he is getting better. He loves the new offensive coordinator, Brian Johnson. Look, Shane Steichen did a great job, but he has a really good relationship dating back to his, they were friends. Their fathers were friends. So just interesting that everybody around Philadelphia sees Jalen Hurts have room for improvement. That said, so if you're looking for passing volume, I think he's going to have more passing volume. I think you could look at any of the top guys. Like, who throws the ball the most? What teams throw the ball a lot? Well, the Minnesota Vikings threw the ball like nearly 65% of the time last year. I think that's a safe bet. I think Justin Herbert's a safe bet to throw the ball a hell of a lot. Joe Burrow's a safe bet to throw the ball a hell of a lot. Trevor Lawrence, a safe bet to have a lot of attempts. I think Tua Tagovailoa, safe to have a lot of attempts if you have the stomach to get past the injury concerns. I am blowing past the injury concerns. Don't care. I'm drafting Mike quite late. Geno Smith will have decent volume. I don't know about Daniel Jones if it's as great. Jared Goff should have good volume. Aaron Rodgers should be sufficient. I think you get down to the range of outliers. Ryan Tannehill is a guy that's been mentioned here. Why are we keep talking about Ryan Tannehill all of a sudden? Because he has a good receiving core all of a sudden, or a better receiving core. Right? The last time we saw him with a good receiving core, 2020, he was like a top 10 fantasy quarterback. So suddenly he looks like an interesting play. I don't think this is going to be a huge volume play, but I think he can do some scoring and also has some mobility as well. So I think those are some of the ones that I'm interested in that volume. Justin Herbert would be especially so. Andrew wants to know, is the Scholars DFS weekly article returning this year? That is what I've been informed. I think that is a fair estimate. Yes, look for the DraftKings sheet of knowledge to be available. Andrea has 2 wide receivers, so I guess that question is not done, so I will wait for the rest of that. But it's just interesting, the builds that I'm seeing. I think I'm paying a lot more attention to that. I'm at the point in best ball draft season where it seems like I'm not adhering to plans more as I'm trying to get pieces that I don't have a lot of. And it was funny, I talked earlier in this program about the Chicago Bears backfield. I want to get into that a little more because I think it is interesting. I think Khalil Herbert is clearly being viewed as the running back 1 there. Again, Hub Arkish, not a hot take artist, not someone who's out here trying to make a name for himself, a veteran cagey, wily reporter, been with Pro Football Weekly forever. Just came on my radio program last night and said without, just any any concerns whatsoever. D'Onta Foreman is clearly the running back one, clearly the starter. As I said, could Khalil Herbert cut into this? We're all drafting Khalil Herbert like he's the starter right now. To be fair, I have a ton of D'Onta Foreman drafted earlier in the year, but it got to the point where I felt I had so much it was time to start getting some Herbert. So I asked this question. Why, should we, what is the path for Khalil Herbert to do more? He says he's got to be better in pass protection. He's got to be better as a receiver. He's a great runner. Did great in yards per carry last year. Is obviously capable of breaking off big plays when he gets the ball in his hands. But it sounds like Foreman is the guy. I asked about Roschon Johnson as well. He says, he does a lot of things well, but he's not quite to that level yet. We'll see. It's backfield, so you never know what can happen. But D'Onta Foreman coming off a couple of good years, or at least, better than expected years, right? Came and filled in for Derrick Henry for the Titans 2 years ago and earned himself a payday with Carolina. And then came through in Carolina. It was a bit of a split, but he seemed to be the primary piece and ran reasonably well. So the Bears are counting on him. Upgraded offensive line there in Chicago. So I think it's kind of interesting when you hear some of these things, and also the talk about the running back situation in Philadelphia with Chris McPherson was very interesting. Yeah, that's really big news to me, Mr. Scampers, as well. I was really surprised by the whole notion that it's. I mean, I was drafting Foreman, still assuming Khalil Herbert was the starter. I just didn't like the price, right? So if I go to Underdog right now, I want to say that we're looking at running back. I want to say 43. Let me just bring it up here. It seemed like the prices were about what you would expect if you expected Khalil Herbert to be totally the starter, right? I mean, I think that's where most of us were. So looking here, let's see. Running back, so I want to say 30, 43. Khalil Herbert, running back 39 right now on Underdog Fantasy. Foreman is down at Foreman is actually going after Roschon Johnson. Roschon Johnson currently going as running back 48. D'Onta Foreman, running back 50. Like, again, things can change. I remember hearing last year that, in June that Herbert was a guy the coaching staff really loved, and they wanted him to move ahead of David Montgomery. Then this year, when you see David Montgomery move on, you would think, you kind of connected those dots. Right? Like, oh, they like Khalil Herbert, and now David Montgomery is gone, so this must be the Khalil Herbert show. Hub Arkish says not. And again, Hub not out there looking to make a name for himself. So put a little credence into what he says. We'll be looking into this more in the course of time. You can keep the questions coming. By the way, in case you missed it, you're just dialing in. I'm Bob Harris, senior editor at FootballDiehards.com. You can go there, check out all the latest info. We got a great new article from Gary Davenport on draft strategies. We'll have a ton of stuff going on. Tuesday, August 8th, the August update of the premium content goes live on the site, so be ready for that. It'll happen right about midnight, Monday night, Central Time, so be ready, people. It's coming, and go use the promo code DIEHARDS to get 15% off everything you want there, and we'll look forward to that. Again, you can listen to the Football Diehards on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio Monday, Thursday, Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Next week, schedule will be a little crazy because I'm doing a couple episodes of Fantasy Dirt as well. I'll be on there with Michael Fabiano on Wednesday and Friday. I'll be missing the Friday night diehards. There will be no Saturday diehards because of all the shenanigans at the Expo. I will be broadcasting live from the Expo at 2 p.m. With Jeff Ratcliffe, 2 p.m., 2 to 4 on Sunday afternoon. So looking forward to all of that. But plenty of information coming on Football Diehards, where you'll catch us 4 times a week. I'll be doing the pregame show on Sundays again with Jeff Mann, so looking forward to that as well. And also, when the season starts, you'll hear us on the NFL radio channel, Mike Dempsey and myself, Football Diehards on Saturday nights. So we'll get that all out there as the plans become more concrete. We know exactly the hours of that, and it'll probably be simulcast on the fantasy channel, so whichever one you listen to, NFL or fantasy, we'll get you covered. So yes, Mr. Scampers out there, the rumors last season that was totally, started hearing that in June that they liked Herbert more than, and Herbert, by the way, was more of a big play threat, it seemed like. So it was very interesting to hear that news. So we'll see how it goes. Andrea, I see that you started a question with 2 wide receivers. Oh, that's your start of your draft. So 2 wide receivers. Well, I've drafted with you. I have seen you do this. I'm curious, what other builds are out there? Is anyone, anyone going running back heavy early? I feel like it's funny when I came out of last season, I think we all felt the same way. We came out and we said, man, wide receiver early is the way to go. And you saw those early drafts, I think I want to say in February, where, it would be like 8 wide receivers, right? It wasn't surprising. I think that's moderated a little bit. I think you're seeing more running backs go. But there's still tons of running back value throughout. I'll just take a look at some of the players I think are super, super great values at the running back position. Christian McCaffrey going 3rd overall in Underdog Fantasy. Austin Eckler going 7th. That's a value to me. Bijan going 8th. Kind of a value for me. Nick Chubb has moved up to running back 4. I think we're putting a lot of emphasis. I'm not sure that that's a value, but I don't think it's a bad pick. Saquon Barkley going at pick 17 as running back 5. Tony Pollard, Derek Brown, if you heard on this very program a couple of weeks ago and on the Football Diehards last night, Derek was on, reiterating his view that Tony Pollard is the running back 1, making the case that the volume will be sufficient, the offense will be a powerhouse, and he will be the primary red zone weapon. I think that's it. Jonathan Taylor at running back 7, 21. Tail end of round 2. Like that. Here's the one that stands out to me, people. This stands out to me. Derrick Henry. So there's 2 schools of thought on Derrick Henry. One of those schools of thought we're going into about year 3 or 4 of. He's about to fall off the cliff. Can't trust him. Has too many carries, too many miles. Got hurt. Getting old. Okay. He's defied all those principles. And I speak to every beat writer I speak to on the Tennessee Titans. I ask them the same question. I ask the same question about Travis Kelce as well. Do we see anything, any indication on the field during workouts that suggests to you, as covering the team daily, that Derrick Henry is slowing down? Well, you get some people who say Travis Kelce, yes, they're making allowances for his age a little bit in practices, etc., and that he takes a little more time off or this or that. You don't hear that about Derrick Henry. You hear that he's working harder than ever. You hear that he does unusual things as part of his workout. So for me, Derrick Henry at that price, that cost is just, it's hard for me to pass up. It's hard for me to pass him up. I'll be honest with you. Before, not surprisingly, I have him as my running back 6 right now. My top running backs: McCaffrey, Eckler, Bijan Robinson at 3, Barkley at 4, Nick Chubb at 5, Derrick Henry 6, Jonathan Taylor 7, Tony Pollard at 9. I have Ramondre Stevenson at 9. I'm going to keep him there. If they bring in another piece, I may adjust. I have Josh Jacobs at 11 and my beloved Jahmyr Gibbs at 12. And yes, I'm still banging that drum. I will continue to bang that drum. This is a simple thing. Dwayne McFarland had a great tweet. I want to say, let me look this up because I thought it was and I know it's cherry picking a little bit. I'm not going to lie, but I like it because it it backs my stance, right? But also, I think it's a good stance, a good stat, and I know that like you could say, well, not everyone. This doesn't work for everyone. Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey, said McFarland in a tweet, didn't even register 30% of their team's rushing attempts as rookies. They finished as running back 3 and running back 9, respectively. Then he below said, "This is a Jahmyr Gibbs tweet." This is my point, right? We're sitting here and we're investing this capital, in Bijan Robinson because of where he was drafted. It's 4 picks, people. 4 picks difference. And I get it. David Montgomery's there. And I think he'll have a role. But talking to people that cover the team closely, you're going to see a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs in passing situations, split out wide, both guys on the field at the same time. Great offensive line. This is a hill I will die on. And if he fails, I will die because I am so heavily invested. So, look, we all have players we like, in this regard. I'd like to hear some of your players. Which hills are you willing to die on? I'd be interested to know which players are you putting all your eggs into that basket. One that I'm putting a lot of eggs into the basket is Michael Thomas, not because I think he is 2019 Michael Thomas, but because I think last year he opened the season with a couple touchdown catches, looked pretty solid, has a decent quarterback, probably an upgraded quarterback, if we're being honest. The people that you talk to that cover the team on a daily basis have super high expectations for him. But more so than that, he's cheap. Like me, I'm cheap. So very interesting plays. There's any that you have out there. Darren Waller is another one for me. Can't get enough of. Price is right. Roll is right. You'll hear me say this often. Some of you already have, and I apologize for that. But I'm looking for those tight ends who can be their team's de facto wide receiver 1. Who are those guys? Kelce, Andrews. I don't think it's Hawkinson. I don't think that's Kittle. I don't think that's Kyle Pitts, who, by the way, may be going way overpriced. Talked to D. Orlando Ledbetter of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution this week, and said it hasn't looked great so far for Pitts. And like, he's got all the talent in the world. I get it, but he's got to come together. Quarterback is a factor here as well. So we'll see about that. Dallas Goedert, who I like an awful lot, but I don't like him as much as Darren Waller, because A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith say not to. And well, meanwhile, Darren Waller is in a room full of slot receivers. Okay, Isaiah Hodgins I like a little bit, but it's about the price. Darren Waller, I think, has that path or the expectation even to be the wide receiver one, the top receiving asset on that club. We've seen him heavily targeted before. I get it. He has to stay healthy. That has not been his strength. But beyond that, I don't see a lot of tight ends looking to give you that. No one with that is certain a tight end or, that high volume role as Darren Waller. One guy who's going way underrated, and I've drafted him a lot, Tyler Higbee, currently going as tight end 15 on Underdog Fantasy. Last year I had 100 targets. 4 tight ends had that range of targets. That's, TJ Hawkinson range targets. I don't know. Will he just fall down after he catches it? Maybe. That's fine. He gets 100 targets. I'll take that every day. Cole Kmet should be heavily targeted. It's tight end 17 as well. Plenty of upside guys around in between those guys. I'm like working on Mike Gesicki. I'll say that, knowing that our friend Mike Fiala, regular on this program, told me 2 nights ago that Hunter Henry is going to be the guy I think Mike Gesicki is going to be. Sometimes Mike is mean like that. Crazy. Mr. Scamper's putting all his late round eggs in CEH. I have started to put some eggs in that as well. That basket is looking pretty good to me. Just the price, it's a free square. Charles Davis says the running backs always move up as draft season comes around. That's what we're seeing, right? I think that's it. We all go back into our defensive positions, so to speak, right? We've always been, that running back is that position of scarcity. And truly, the feature backs are becoming increasingly scarce. Go check out this year's Fantasy Football Pro Forecast magazine. Great article by Marcus Grant from NFL.com. Highlights all that, those situations. So interesting. Gesicki could be first target. Dulcich could be second. I agree with that. And I'm heavily invested in Mike Gesicki. And by heavily invested, I mean tons of cheap shares, right? That's, I'm not out there looking to push the envelope and move his ADP. I'm looking for him to be a great value with exactly what Mr. Scamper said. The possibility, you look at that receiving room, right? And like I have plenty of, Tyquan Thornton's been a big free square player for me, kind of cooled that role a little bit when Devontae Parker got some money. But remember, Devontae Parker's contract is heavily, laden with incentives, not necessarily, what it appears to be on the surface. So I'm okay with that. But it's Devontae Parker, it's Tyquan Thornton, it's Kendrick Bourne, it's Juju Smith-Schuster. And I get, granted, Juju can play, but does he profile as a true wide receiver one, that dominant force? No. Gesicki is a different piece, and he has a connection to Bill O'Brien. O'Brien recruited him to Penn State, didn't actually coach him there. We moved on to the Texans, but there's a connection there. So you're putting all those pieces together at cheap prices. That's the ticket, right? And Greg Dulcich, super talented. Talked to a Denver beat writer recently. He brought Dulcich up without prompting. We asked him, who's the piece here that we should have an eye on just in general. Just try to get him to elicit this kind of take was out of the clear blue. He said Dulcich, and we've all heard, Sean Payton used one of his special code words. He could be our joker. I don't know what the hell his joker is, but it sounds exciting, right? And Greg Dulcich, an athletic, speedy guy, works the seam, as we've seen traditionally in these Sean Payton offenses. Go back to Jimmy Graham, and there are many of them who have had this kind of role. So it would be interesting as well. Charles Davis in on Elijah Moore. The people in Cleveland are totally in on this as well. They seem to love Elijah Moore, say he looks great. Think he will eventually, kind of Donovan Peoples-Jones will be allowed to move on here soon. Not this year. He'll remain, on the outside. Elijah Moore, though, capable. People maybe view him as a slot receiver, capable of playing outside as well as in the slot, and do both equally well. And they say he's been doing a fantastic job. So super exciting there, especially if they're going to start trying to get their money's worth out of one Deshaun Watson. It's a $230 million guaranteed contract. So a lot to like there. And I think it's funny, the Nick Chubb, he's really gaining ground this year. And I think the knock on him has always been that he doesn't catch, can't catch, well, he can't catch. They just don't throw him the ball a lot. I think when he gets thrown the ball, he's caught up reasonably well, as in a lot of these like running backs. Right? Remember when Leonard Fournette couldn't catch, like coming out of LSU and got like some handful of passes? Well, turns out they just didn't throw to him. Right? When you start throwing to them, some of these guys end up being able to catch the football. So maybe we'll see something similar with Nick Chubb. I'll remind you, my friend Matt Waldman from the rookie scouting portfolio, in coming out, had Nick Chubb ranked ahead of Saquon Barkley just as a pure runner. So I don't think anyone argues about Nick Chubb's rushing ability. Does he give you that super high upside as a receiver? Maybe not the super high upside, but it's probably not totally irrelevant. Bob BSC, you got a portion of a question there. I'll let you get the rest of it. We've got a few more minutes here. If you have questions, we'll be back Wednesday night for On the Hot Seat. I'll have a fantastic guest, undoubtedly. I have not decided who yet. Will surprise you. It'll surprise me, probably. Then I'll be heading for the Expo, the Fantasy Football Expo on Thursday. Hope to see some of you there. I'll be doing shows from there. I'll be at the parties there. I'll be at the Kings Classic drafts there at Tom Benson Stadium. Is Etienne hurt? He is on the sidelines. I have not heard of a significant injury, Andrea. So, you'll see these things kind of come and go over the course of time. I'll see if we could see anything of significance here. I haven't seen anything significant other than, other than my Twitter is very slow, or X. I'll be honest with you, I'm not following the news while I'm doing these talks, so you sometimes can stump me. There we go. Devin Etienne. Don't see anything in the moment, Andrea, that anyone expressing a lot of concern here. Don't see it, but we'll watch for more, and we'll cover that if we see anything. Elijah Moore is in 21 packages. It was already some of the Kareem Hunt role. That's what we're hearing as well. So, yeah, I'm not going to panic on A-Chain just at the moment yet. We'll give it a little time. So, Bob B, an 8-team half-point super flex, one keeper, snake draft league. I have first pick, and we'll keep Josh Allen in the second round. Should I pick up Burrow in the first? McCaffrey, Jefferson, Hill, gone as keepers. I'm probably, so is it a two? Yeah, I would pick up Burrow for sure. In the super flex, you would dominate. You'll own that league. I think that's a totally fair approach, especially given some of the guys that are kept. It's only an 8-team league, so you'll be able to come back around and do some things. I think that's perfectly fine. All right, see if we got more questions. I think if it's not my internet, something is slowing down on my devices here. So I may have to wrap this up a little bit. Cannot see if any more questions are coming in. All right, let's do this. Let me just make sure before I give up the ghost here. Yeah, I think either my computer is dying or I'm not seeing the questions. Bear with me, people. I'll get this done. There we go. I think it's that computer. There we go. So I don't see any additional questions. So I do think we're good here. All right, let's call it a show because my computer is getting hinky here. Well, now it's coming back. Go figure. Technology. Can't live with it. Can't live without it. All right, everybody, let's wrap it up for today. We'll be back Wednesday, 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. Eastern. For On the Hot Seat, go to footballdiehards.com. Check out all we have to offer there, including the latest article by Gary Davenport on draft strategies. Tons of great articles up there, by the way. You can check out the magazines, the Pro Forecast, and Football Diehards magazines. Tons of great content in there. Use the promo code DIEHARDS to get 15% off whatever you purchase. August update. Premium content goes live Tuesday. Don't miss it. That's August 8th. Happy to put it out there. Has a great time. Thank you, Mr. Scampers, for putting in that in the chat. I think I'm starting to catch up on my main screen here, so I don't think I missed any questions. So we'll go with that. Tune into the Football Diehards on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio today, 5 p.m. We'll be talking Titans. We'll be talking Packers. We'll be talking Expo with Bob Lung on the program in hour 2. And by the way, Bob Lung doing us a huge favor. He is a driver for the Hall of Fame ceremony. So he's doing it between his job driving players to the Expo. and the party afterwards. So thanks to Bob. Looking forward to the expo. Look forward to seeing everyone. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Campers. Thanks, Bob B. Appreciate you. Thanks, Andrea, for coming. Thanks, Jim Furry. Appreciate you coming. We will see you Wednesday night right here on the YouTube channel. Bob Harris, over and out.